Here's the rundown of the news you absolutely must have, the analysis you need on Monday, June 29th, in the year of the plague 2020. And the only story is the one big story. The United States has surged past 2.5 million coronavirus cases. I was on Meet the Press yesterday discussing this. We had 509 deaths on Saturday. Just for comparison purposes, 509 deaths on Saturday. In the height of the pandemic's surge was in May, I believe, 2,700 deaths in one day. That's for comparison purposes. I misspoke, by the way, on Meet the Press. If you happen to watch it, I said Germany had 689 deaths the day before. They had not. They'd had 689 cases. I wanted to say that first thing out of the box. I misspoke, and I knew it as soon as I got in the car and looked at my notes, and I said, oh, gosh darn it. So I had to immediately tweet out my correction. I'm sorry, that is not NBC News' fault. That's my fault. But the other two numbers are correct. 2,700 is our high water mark for deaths in the United States. 509 deaths on Saturday. So, what does that tell us? Although the number of cases has surged, the number of deaths has fallen. Indeed, the numbers that have come out of Florida, where there is incredibly good tracking going on in terms of the prevalence and incidence of the cases, we can see overall that it's about the young people. On Saturday in Florida, for the second straight day, Florida crushed its previous record for new coronavirus cases, reporting 9,585 infections, according to the New York Times this morning. Another 8,530 infections were reported on Sunday. So there you have 18,000 infections in Florida of the coronavirus on Saturday and Sunday. The median age of the new coronavirus patient in Florida is now, wait for it, 36 years old. Everybody, it's asymptomatic transmission is just proving impossible to control. The new coronavirus cases nationally are following the same sort of pattern. I made the point, and by the way, there is a concerted effort by the anti-Trump media to blame Trump for this. So yesterday I made the point in one of my 3 or 4 at-bats on Meet the Press. No one is talking about the event that triggered this surge. And there is no getting around that the murder of George Floyd precipitated millions of people in close contact with or without masks. Some wore masks, many did not. They were all jammed together. It passes sweaty contact, droplets in the air. Don't tell me it wasn't the marches. Of course it was the marches. That does not say the marches shouldn't have occurred. It just says there is a cause and effect, and you'll never persuade me that it was not the marches that did not lead to this surge. Now, governors doing what they can are closing bars and clubs and not moving forward. But let's be clear, this is not Donald Trump's fault. I woke up early today to pen an article for the Washington Post because I just watched it all day yesterday. The fetching Mrs. Hewitt has gone off for a week, so I'm a bachelor for a week. So I watched 3 hours of Yellowstone and lots of news and prepared the show and prepared a piece for the Washington Post. And all the news you need to know today is that the world is in the grip of the virus. All the world can do is common sense preparation for the time being and wait for the United States and others to come up with a vaccine. Now, our therapeutics have improved dramatically. Our therapeutics have improved so that the death rate is, the likelihood of death if you get the virus is just lower. I don't know what the exact percentage is, it's just lower. If you are over 70 years old or even over 50 years old, your chances of surviving are so much greater. I watched Andrew Cuomo on Meet the Press yesterday try and scare people about Kawasaki syndrome. It's bad if a child gets the Kawasaki-like syndrome that accompanies a very tiny number of cases. But children are not yet at risk. Schools should reopen. People under 40 are going to get it, and at worst, they're going to feel bad for a couple of weeks. Again, I'm telling you, 95% of the cases. It remains a disease that is fatal to older people with 2 or 3 of the comorbidities. That's the real target of this. So we have widespread, almost unstoppable spreading. Though it would be good to slow the surge down, again, not to cure the disease, but to preserve hospital capacity. So please, as I have said since January, wear a mask outside. Wear a mask inside if you can, but outside if you can. Don't wear a mask during dinner. If you're in a socially distant restaurant, the server will have a mask on. See, that is called minimizing risk without being nutty. I'm not asking you to be nutty. I'm asking you to be aware that you don't know if you're spreading the disease, so wear the mask. Unless you know you don't have the disease, in which case you don't have to wear the mask, but you should be wishing other people around you did. Would that we were all, the president and the vice president, surrounded by a cone of droplet-free air. The droplets don't stay in the air the whole time. They fall to the ground eventually. You don't get them from your shoes. So the common sense approach here is just put on your mask and be prepared for someone in your family to be ill. Yesterday, the director said in my ear his son had it. I know the director well. He's just a wonderful guy. Meet the press director yesterday. His son had it, but his young son's a collegiate athlete, and he'd gotten over it. I'm sure there are tens of millions of people around the world who have had coronavirus and felt terrible for a couple of weeks. Not as bad as some people have felt, not intubator bad, not hospitalization bad, not I cannot inhale, exhale the right way bad, not the fevers and the aches, but just sort of tired, achy. It is flu-like in that regard. But the major story is, and this is what I want you to underscore, this has nothing to do with Donald Trump. This has everything to do with the marches that followed George Floyd's murder. And the transparent, indeed translucent attempt of the media to blame Donald Trump for this is simply part of the Elect Joe Biden campaign going on in the infotainment news network complex that is New York, D.C., and L.A. based. That's my takeaway. And you are free to disagree with me. 1-800-520-1234. Trump has not botched the pandemic. He's done very well. People forget. He closed the border with China on January 28th. People forget. He sent Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to argue to his counterparts and National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien to argue with his counterparts. Close the borders. They were ignored, and the world has suffered. This is China's virus, more specifically the Communist Chinese Party that did this to the world. Not Donald Trump, not Vice President Pence, not Tony Fauci. China, the communists in China did this. And his response, Donald Trump's response, has been as good as anyone. He did not screw up the first test. The CDC bureaucrats did. So the time he bought us was in large part wasted. And now we wasted the suppression we did via the social distancing for 45 days. So we start over without the massive demonstrations. But I just wanted to say that. Mike in Fairfax County. Good morning, Mike. Hello, Mike. Mike. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say you're confirming my what my retired radiologist father told me was going to happen. This virus, obviously, the protests and everything accelerated this. He says, but unless they find a cure right away, you're going to have a form of you're going to have the viral spread. Younger people are going to become immune to it, and you got to protect older people, and that isn't going to change. And you're going to see other countries, little flare-ups starting to occur, because if you suppress the curve too much, what's going to happen is you're just delaying when most people are going to eventually have the virus and then become immune to it. And he said that didn't change. This just accelerated it. And the big lie is they're not telling you the number of deaths is continuing to go down. I totally expected a spike, even if we didn't have the riots and the protests. The thing that I find amazing is, did you ask Chuck Todd, why are they suddenly quiet during the week or 3 weeks or 4 weeks of these protests without warning?
Look, no, in my 3 minutes, I made the case for the president. I made the case for no one talks about ventilators anymore. I'm not out to get anyone. Chuck runs his own show. He runs it very fairly, gives me my at-bats. All I want people to understand is the whole story are those demonstrations. That's why we have the spike And the spike is going to be with us for as long as those people continue to circulate. Stay tuned.